Hey guys, welcome to another Tuesday night podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Tonight we're live, and if you're watching us live, go ahead and comment your questions, and we'll be sure to try and answer them for you. Guys, Tim Bratz started his real estate career straight out of college. I moved to New York City, started selling commercial real estate. It didn't take him long. He realized that being on the broker side isn't where he wanted to be. He watched all the transactions, the money, the big money happening, and so he decided quickly that he needed to be on the investor side. And he's coming to us live tonight from South Carolina. So, guys, I'm Todd Sachs. I'm the founder and broker here at Sachs Realty. We are a Maryland real estate brokerage company. We help clients with residential and commercial transactions, but not just here in Maryland. We help people all over the country through our amazing broker network. So if you don't have an agent, feel free to reach out to me at any time. All of our information will be in the show notes, and as well as our guest, Tim. And without further ado, let's go ahead and meet Tim Bratz. Tim, welcome to our podcast.
Todd, appreciate you having me, buddy. Excited to be here, man.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun tonight.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I love where your head's at. I know we've talked several times leading up to this, and I think we see eye to eye on a lot of different philosophies and ideas and circumstances and impact and all those different kinds of things. So I'm excited to get into it.
Absolutely. So tell everybody a little bit about you. I know you're married, you have children, you used to live in Ohio, but take it away.
Yeah, I mean, super high level. I know there's a lot to unpack, but high level, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio originally. My dad was a cop. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She had an education degree, big into volunteer work, and went to school, graduated from high school in 2003, went to a local university in Ohio. And when I was going through college, 2003 to 2007, the market was going gangbusters. Everybody's making money in real estate. And I was a money motivated kid at the age of 20 years old. So I got involved from an internship standpoint with a big home builder. I had like a little painting company and construction type work that we did in the summers. And then when I graduated in 2007, I moved out to New York City, got a real estate license. For some reason, I ended up in the commercial brokerage side. And like you said, I brokered a deal. It took me several months, about 8 months to close my first transaction. And it was a little dumpy 400 square foot space. And we signed a $10,000 a month lease on that 400 square feet. Not to mention, I'm looking at this thing. I'm like, this landlord's going to make $2 million over the next 12 years off of this lease. And he had 7 other retail spaces, and he had another 10 stories of apartments above it. And it hit me. It resonated with me. Like, I got into real estate because I wanted residual income. And, just the brokerage side, there's nothing wrong with it. You can build a big business and you can make a lot of money. But for what I wanted to do and what my ambitions, what my goals were, I knew I needed to be on the investment side of it. So moved down to Charleston, South Carolina, bought a house on my credit card at the age of 23 years old, and then just kept on scaling up. I've done everything in real estate, from wholesaling and flipping and property management, turnkey, rental properties. Bought my first apartment building in 2012 when I was 27. And that's when it really resonated, the scale of apartments with me. So fast forward, had some good partnerships, had some bad partnerships, had to liquidate my portfolio in 2015, start all over again, went through some ups and downs. But today, I told you just before we started that I closed on a big deal today. So I'm 35 years old. I have 4,840 units, rental units as of today, about $410 million real estate portfolio. And when I stabilize all of it, there's a little bit of work that needs to go into it. It'll be worth around $450 million. So, it's kind of crazy, right? Like my entire goal when I was starting out was like, if I hit $100 million of property, like I made it big time. And then all of a sudden you just coast right past that. You just keep going and going and going. And the stuff compounds. It's amazing the way, how quickly it compounds once you get the snowball rolling. The hard part is getting it rolling. I was really bad at real estate for the first 7 or 8 years. I just got good about 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so all of a sudden it looks like an overnight success, but there's a lot of work that went in early on.
Yeah, well, we certainly appreciate you, sharing your story tonight. And for those of you that are watching, we get asked a lot, how do we get started into investing, in real estate? And, I started, it's kind of interesting, Tim. My dad was a cop too. He was a cop in Baltimore. And so we share that, that commonality there. I'm not 35 years old and I don't have 4,000 doors. So at some point you kind of supersize this stuff. I started swinging a hammer back in 1989 and doing construction and contracting. And, but I've took the broker route and but you're right. I mean, you need everything to go together. So let's kind of backtrack a little bit. So everybody, if you guys are just tuning in, so Tim's 35 years old, 4,800 units. It's amazing. So we'll start unpacking it a little bit here. What took you to New York City? So you graduated college. Just kind of give us like why did you go down you said you were interested in real estate. You said you were a painter. So in college, were you painting houses?
I don't know if you've ever seen these like college painting companies that go around and they hire a bunch of college kids and they go paint houses. So I was recruited to run essentially that in, I don't know, when I was a sophomore in college. So my sophomore going into my junior year, I had like 15 college buddies that were I ran 3 or 4 different crews that were just painting houses all around Cleveland that summer, made a couple bucks. And then the next summer I decided I'm going to do this on my own, right? I don't have to give 30% of the profit away to the franchise owner. And so I started doing it on my own. And that summer I also interned with a big home builder and learned really world-class sales of real estate. And they learned a lot on the sales side and the construction side, and just kind of getting my bearings in real estate. And they offered me a job, but my brother lived out in New York City. He's actually in law enforcement as well. And it said, hey man, why don't you come and live in New York? When else are you gonna be able to live for free in New York City? So I moved out to New York City at 21, 22 years old, and lived with my brother who was 27 at the time. And took a job in construction, hated it, did it for like 2-3 months, and was glorified, I don't know, like trash man. I just took workers around all around New York City and dumped trash at the dump or whatever. But then I got my real estate license, and I realized that's really what I wanted to do. And I don't know how it ended up with a commercial brokerage, but I found a commercial brokerage in Manhattan, dropped my license with them, and they gave me really just bottom of the barrel leads. And I would just call on landlords and say, hey, I noticed you have a vacant retail space or office space. It's pretty easy to see if something's vacant or not, right? And so I'd reach out to them and call on these landlords, try to get listings. Or there were some business owners that said, hey, I want to expand. I want a second location or a third location or a 10th location. Can you help find me some, a new spot in this part of town? And so I would represent both buyers and landlords and try to broker some sort of retail leases. And again, it took me about 8 months. Finally found this 400 square foot space, or I had a listing, and I found a business owner to come in and rent it. And we signed a lease, and it was a big payday. So got all excited about it, and just doing the math, I realized this guy's doing something once. He's signing a lease one time, providing essentially a vanilla box to this tenant, and the tenant's going to pay this guy $10,000 a month with annual increases over a 12-year term, and he's going to get paid 120 times over the next 12 years, or no, 144 times over the next 12 years for doing something one time. And I was like, dude, there's something to that, right? Can you imagine doing work once and then get paid not 144 times? Like, how many times can you then do that action? How many times can you do that activity? And so I wanted to invest, and so I moved down to Charleston, South Carolina, which is where I'm at now, and took a job actually selling cars for like 6 months, just trying to get my bearings, reading a whole bunch of books. Taking courses and spending $500 on this and $250 on that, and then just YouTubing videos, watching, essentially, it was like vlogs back then, and reading people's blogs and all that kind of stuff. They didn't have the cool podcasts that they do now. And, just realized I'm not going to learn how to do real estate by reading about it in a book. I need to go and pull the trigger. I need to actually jump in the water. So it's like swimming, right? You can't read about swimming by reading about swimming in a book. You actually have to get in the water and tread water and feel it. And so I think real estate's the same way. And I was like, all right, I'm quitting my job. I'm going to make this work. And I just kind of burned the ships. And for a few months, I just made offers on properties. And this is when the market totally collapsed. End of 2008, market collapsed. I show up to the party ready to invest, and everybody's running out the back door. And like, the house is on fire. Everybody run. I was like, oh, damn. So I'm thinking, I'm a punk 23-year-old kid at the time. I don't have any money, and everybody's saying run from real estate. So it wasn't that easy to go and come up with capital to go buy one of these houses. All these houses started popping up, REO sales, real estate owned, bank owned properties all over the place, but I couldn't get any of them. So that first house, I found the cheapest house on the MLS. I was listed for 25 grand. The only problem was I didn't have $25,000. I had the ambition to take it down. I just didn't have the money. And nobody's going to lend me money. All my friends are straight out of college and first time they ever made money, and they're spending it all at the bars. My parents aren't going to give me any money. The only person that gave me money was MasterCard. And so I was like, hey, MasterCard, will you give me more money? And I got them to increase my limit to $15,000. And I made an offer on that house. It was listed at 25. I went in at 12. They came back at 20. I came back at 14, my highest and best offer. And they accepted it. And so I actually put that house on a credit card. I bought it with a balance transfer check from my MasterCard. And then I physically did all the work. I had a couple $1,000s saved up of my own money, like $3 or $4 grand or something, saved up of my own money to essentially live off of and feed myself and actually do the improvements on the property. And so I slapped lipstick on this thing. It was a pig, and it was still a pig when I was done. It just looked prettier. And so, I was Google searching and YouTubing how to install carpet, how to change out light fixtures. I knew how to do landscaping. I knew how to paint. And I just kind of cleaned up the house. And then I didn't know how to sell it. So I said, hey, how do you sell these things? Well, I could probably host an open house. That's how real estate agents sell. So I passed out all these flyers in all the different streets. I put out signs all over and held an open house one Saturday and had like all these neighbors come in. And one of the neighbors made me an offer for $33,000 on the property. And so I was all into it for like 18, 19 grand. And I made about $13,000 or $14,000 after, all the closing costs and everything. And it's the biggest check I ever made. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm a punk 23-year-old kid. I think I just turned 24 during that time. And I was like, everybody's saying run from real estate. It just worked for me, right? It's my first deal. So, you do it again. Then I learned how to wholesale. And if you're not familiar with wholesaling, it's contracting a property and then selling the contract, not really closing on the property, but selling the contract and the ability to buy the property at a certain price point. And so I learned how to wholesale. And then I started meeting people who saw my work ethic and they saw, hey, this kid's got some potential. He's working hard and he knows how to find a good deal. My problem was like, I didn't have money, and they had money, but maybe they didn't have the knowledge or the experience or the bandwidth to take on more properties. And so it allowed me to go in and partner with people and create my first private money lenders and joint venture partners. And I was able to start taking down single family houses. So I'd buy a house, I'd fix it all up, I'd rent it, and then I'd refinance it. And that was, it's called the BRRRR method: buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. And that was the model.
Yeah. So that first deal that you were doing and you put it on your credit card, did you live there while you were doing the renovations? Was that the
No, I didn't house hack that one. About a year after that, I bought a primary residence. I bought a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath house in a good area. Bought it for $185, and I put about 15 grand into it. And I got my dad to co-sign on the loan, and then I borrowed money for the down payment and the renovation funds.
So starting out when you bought that first flip, and you put it on your credit card, man, what were the surprises? So people, they don't realize when they buy a house and they get into doing the renovations, what were some of the things that you experienced that, even though you had a little bit of construction knowledge and as a painter,
I painted houses, man. That was about the extent of it.
Yeah.
I didn't really know how to deal with cities and zoning and, well, not necessarily even zoning, but like contracting and insurance and all that kind of stuff.
Did you pull permits on it the first deal?
Absolutely not. Yeah. Absolutely not. I went in there and I learned a lot. It's again, you learn by jumping in the water. And I got in there and it was a duplex. It was zoned as a single family. So that was an issue in itself. The water was run, and it used to be owned by the neighbor next door or something, or like a cousin or somebody of the neighbor next door, and they used to take the same water. And so the neighbor was using my water, and I'd have to like bill it back to them or something. Otherwise, they'd have to get their own. So I actually was able to kind of put them in a little bit of a headlock, and I got them to pay 100% of the water bill, It's just, there's bars on the windows. I've never been in a neighborhood that had bars on the windows. Why are there bars on the windows? Because it's a rough neighborhood, and it was a big learning experience.
What pulled you to South Carolina?
Just quality of life. It was a crappy winter up in New York.
Did you know people there?
No, I didn't know anybody. Once I started looking down there, I realized one of my good buddies from high school, his cousin lived down there, and I ended up living with his cousin and his cousin's fiance for, I don't know, about a year until I bought my house. And then I house hacked my house with that buddy of mine. He ended up moving down to Charleston. Another buddy of mine moved down to Charleston. So I rented 2 bedrooms out to them. And then, they paid most of my mortgage and the utilities on my own house while I was doing some of these other things. But yeah, man, I definitely learned. I tried to get it rezoned, that initial house, into a duplex.
To be a multifamily.
Yeah, and all the neighbors like flipped out on me, right? And so I show up, I think it's going to be something easy, and all of a sudden all the neighbors are there, and they're like, we don't want any duplexes on the street, and we don't want this, and everybody's like yelling at this guy. I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I get all red in the face, and like the judge is like, oh, well, yeah, we don't want that, do we? I was like, what the hell happened? So I sold it as is. I didn't even change the zoning. I didn't know what to do. That spooked me quite a bit. Otherwise, I probably would have held out for even a bigger payday, or I would have rented it. I mean, this thing would have rented for like $500 a side. And, that's $1,000 a month on a property you're all into for 20 G's, not even. I mean, that's a hell of a return on investment.
That is a good return. So how did you tell everybody how you met your teams? I mean, contractors and things like that. So, that's a big, concern for many people getting into real estate. They say, well, I don't have any real estate construction experience. So how did you meet everybody? Did you drive around to job sites? Did you look online?
It was like Craigslist, and it was driving around. Here's the thing: early on, you don't really know. I was ignorance on fire. I was just like whatever. I was so excited that it didn't really. The problems didn't seem like problems. It's not until year 2, in year 2, the excitement wanes off, and you're still having problems. That's when a lot of people quit. That's when the problems, supersede the excitement on some stuff. That's when a lot of people bail and they go back to their job, or they find something else. Here's the thing, man. I didn't know anything else, right? Like I didn't have any experience doing anything else. What was I going to do? Go to the job? Was I going to go I don't know. I knew real estate would work. I just knew it would be a matter of time. I mean, real estate's not an experiment. You've seen so many people who've made millions and billions of dollars in real estate, and everybody who makes money somewhere else ends up putting their money in real estate. So there's something. It's time tested. It's not like a e-commerce store or a Bitcoin or one of these other flash in the pan, get rich quick kind of things. It's going to work. It's just a matter of time. And so, and I didn't know anything better. So I just put my head down. As many times, I guess, I got kicked in the crotch, by contractors, by tenants, by cities, by everything, joint venture partners, private money lenders, banks bailing at the last minute. All that stuff does happen, and it's going to happen. The question becomes: is your goal, is your ambition greater than whatever the adversities you're going to face are? And as long as that ambition is greater and your end goal is greater than the adversities, then you can push through any sort of adversity.
So where were you pulling the strength from? So, were you listening to, mentors, people that were in the real estate business? A lot of are you faith-based? Where were you getting that encouragement to say, I'm just going to keep trying, keep pushing through? Real estate's where a lot of people make millions of dollars. I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah, man, I think that's a great question. Internally, I was always just, I'm going to make it happen. There's failing is not an option. And I don't know if that's because, I was small growing up, and I didn't, I was always the last picked on, not last pick, but I didn't start in sports because I was too small or whatever. Maybe it's a complex there. I don't know, because I was a late bloomer on all that stuff. I don't know. I was always a good student. I always paid attention. I always had good grades. I always worked real hard. I was pretty popular. But I just had big ambitions to do big things. And I think I told so many people that I was going to be super successful for so long that I didn't really have an option. I had to figure it out. And it was a lot of skinny years, man. All my friends are making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year out of college. and they're making money, and then all of a sudden they're getting promotions. They're making almost $100,000 a year. And then I had one buddy who was an investment banker making like 150 a year, like 2 years out. And then he jumps up to like 200. And I was like, damn, like, meanwhile, I'm going totally broke. Like in 2012, and when I was 27 years old, I had $80 in my bank account and I had 25 grand in credit card debt. I had to borrow money to make the minimum payment on my credit card. I had to borrow money to make the mortgage payment on my house. I had to, I had a lot of, I mean, that's several years in after I thought I had it figured out. I made a lot of stupid mistakes that got me to that point. But, I mean, definitely you're tested. Definitely, you start looking at different things. But I don't know, man. I always had like an internal fire burning saying, I know I'm made for more. I know I'm like, I know I'm there. I know that there's something out there. Like I run, I'd run on the beach because I was so broke and I couldn't afford a gym membership. So I'd ride my bike over to the beach. I'd go for a run on the beach. I'd see all these multi-million-dollar homes. And I'm like, there's so much money out there. Like, I know it's just, there's something I don't know. Like, what is it that I don't know? And, what was it? I think I was spending time doing a bunch of things that did not generate revenue. I stayed busy and active, but I wasn't productive. Activity doesn't mean it's productivity.
Very
and
true.
I was spending a lot of time on stupid things like a website and business cards. And, like, I think networking to an extent, if you're networking with the right people, is very, very valuable. But it was like the blind leading the blind. I was the king of the dipshits. I was the least broke out of all my friends at the time, at least locally in town. And so, like I should have been out sourcing deals, sourcing capital, and finding buyers, finding sellers, finding buyers, and finding money. If you do those three things, you can flip real estate, you can wholesale real estate, you can transact real estate. And then if you want to hold real estate, you just got to get good at like operations, or find somebody who's good at operations. And I just didn't.
Systems.
Yeah, man, I just didn't understand the revenue generating activities. And I was just spinning my wheels, and I wasn't a good steward of capital either. Like I went, and as soon as I started making money when I was like 25 years old, I went and bought a Mercedes, and I went and joined a private dining and country club. And then just traveling and stuff and racking up credit cards and thinking I got residual income, it'll pay for itself. But what realize is like, I wasn't, yeah, for sure, man. I wasn't rich, but I was like, I had enough residual that it covered my living expenses, but then my living expenses went like this. And then I didn't have enough residual. I chased some other shiny objects. I was chasing some opportunities in a network marketing company. I ended up selling my property so I could focus on that. And that didn't pan out the way that I thought it would. And I got a lot out of it. I learned a ton about, mindset and philosophy. And I was, listening to Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and John Maxwell and all these different like amazing minds. And I think that really laid a foundation of like the stick with itness kind of that I have today.
Yeah.
I have an ironclad mindset. It's very hard to mess with this. But I've been working on it for, over a decade, like in and out, listening in my car, reading, listening to podcasts, all that stuff. So it's, I think a lot of it is mindset.
Yeah. So what was the turning point? So when did you start to figure it out? And, for people that are listening, so, it's not easy, right? I mean, you took it a different path. You took the same path that I did. You just dove in and became an entrepreneur. And, there's stats on us, man, where, more than 80% of sole proprietors or businesses fail within the first 2 years. I mean, they're like some crazy statistics, and a lot of it's because we're undercapitalized. We don't have an idea of what the heck we're doing. And, there's two kind of paths. So, for those of you that are listening, you may have a job and you say, okay, well, I make that 100,000 or 70,000, 50,000, whatever it is a year, wherever you are starting out. And, but you want to invest in real estate with that extra cash. So there's that, don't quit your day job. And then there's people like Tim and I that just dove in, took all the risks, and you're at certain points in your life too, because the other thing is, Tim, when you started out doing this, and when I started out doing it, we could take risks. We didn't have kids. We didn't have wives. We had very little. We could fall down a couple times and get back up, dust ourselves off, try it again. It was no big deal, right? But for those of us that already, they get married, we have kids, or we have responsibilities, and then you're like, wow, I'm going to get rid of that, job and like dive in on something like this. It doesn't make sense. So at what point were you, where did you make that switch? So, I see a lot of people, they get into real estate investing and they run into those same, snags as you did. It's like, wow, weird things happen, the neighbors using your water or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you realize, man, I didn't make as much as I thought I would, or I don't have enough to fund the next deal or buy two, or you're two and you want to buy three or four. At what point, Tim, did you say, okay, I'm going to do these things that you were mentioning? And, when did that switch go off, and what was it for you? And what did you do next?
Oh man. Lot to unpack there, right? So, first of all, I think you just keep moving forward. Like the most important thing is you just keep moving forward. You're going to get knocked on your butt a whole bunch of times. Like I remember walking into houses, opening up the door and roaches would fall on my head. I've walked out of houses with fleas up to my knees. I'd leave my pants in the driveway and drive home, hoping I don't get stopped, and go to jail as some sicko who just were driving around in his underwear. And like, I fumigated my car multiple times because of this, right? Like, happened multiple times. And you get burned by a contractor. You get a tenant who puts holes in your wall and games the system. You get a judge who doesn't rule in your favor, even though it's totally black and white that the tenant's got to go. You get like, it's just over and over and over again. You get lenders that bail on you last minute and you got to scramble. You'll learn every single time. If you make the same mistake multiple times, that's on you. If you learn every single time, you get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit, and you don't make that mistake again. And then you hit a certain point where you just stop making mistakes, right? Like it's very difficult to pull the wool over my eyes in doing any deal because I've made all the mistakes already. I've gotten burned on every front somehow in some way. To the point that, my lease used to be a page long, and whoever raised their hand with first month rent and security deposit got the rental. Now my lease is like 15 pages long with before pictures of the unit. And hey, if you clog the plumbing, it's on you. If you get locked out, it's on you. I added all these things in because you learn. My private money lenders, I've had lenders bail on me and I had to raise $4 million a couple years ago. My first real big deal. I was raising $4 million. And somebody told me they had it, and then all of a sudden they couldn't come up with the cash. They couldn't, and I had to raise they told me on Friday before Monday closing, and I had to raise $4 million in 48 hours. I think when your back's up against the wall like that, to go to your, original question, do you stay at your job and play it safe and just trying to passively and like part-time invest in real estate, or do you go all in? First of all, I think it depends on your bandwidth. I think it depends on, your belief in yourself. But I will tell you this, when your back is up against the wall and you are constrained as an individual and you've burned the ships and your only two choices are to succeed or die, human beings are very resilient species, and we tend to succeed. You tend to figure it out. You tend to push through and make it happen however you need to make it happen. And I'm very good at burning the ships. I have always been like, F it, I'm doing it. And I totally cut ties with whatever I was doing before and make sure that I had to make it happen. And if it didn't, I figured it out, man. I think it's a story in all of our heads. Well, what happens if, let me backtrack a second. All right. So fear is an emotion, right? Fear is not real. Fear is, it's a story in our head that we make up about the potential of something coming true that has not yet come true and might never come true, right? It's actually faith and fear are the same. They're the exact same thing. Both are believing in something that has not yet come to pass. The difference is one's positive and one's negative. And if they're both stories and they're both in our head, that means we get to choose the narrative of it being positive or negative. So why worry about the fear part when fear's like, why not just stay positive? And I just stay positive a lot. The other thing is I realized that fear does not equal danger, right? Like, I don't know, 10,000 years ago, if you heard a twig break and you felt fear, it's because your life was in danger because a saber-toothed tiger could jump on your neck and eat you, right?
Right.
Today, you don't have, it's not, we have the same instincts, the fear instincts and hormonal reaction to fear as if it is life-threatening, but it's not. I mean, what's the worst case scenario? You buy a house for $100,000 and you lose $100,000? No, you're gonna be able to sell it for at least $80,000, $90,000, right? Like it's almost impossible to lose money on a $100,000 house or less, because at the worst case scenario, you can rent it out and just sit on it, right? And just let it cash flow for the next 5 years or whatever, until it appreciates and you pay down enough principal and then you can sell it. So like, you know, you're not taking $100,000 risk, you're taking a $10,000 risk. And if your future is not worth that $10,000 risk, if your kids are not worth that $10,000 risk, if retiring your spouse is not worth that, or retiring your parents, or buying your mom a house, or sending your kids to whatever school that they want to go to and giving them the kind of lifestyle, or building a library, or building a church, or building a hospital, or like impacting your community is not worth that $10,000 risk. Like, dude, I think you got to look at your priorities, you know?
That's a great point. So, I mean, yeah, you first have to decide if you want to be in the business. Well, I want to house hack, or, I want to buy a rental property. I mean, you could sit there for years and think of all the reasons why you shouldn't do it, because you haven't figured it all out. And Tim, what you're saying and what we both experienced is at some point you have to commit. You just have to say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy my first place. It's going to work out. I'm going to get knocked around a little bit, have a bad tenant experience, run into things that I have no idea what I'm doing, fumigate your car, right? Mm-hmm. But the idea is you have to decide, I'm going to do it. And then it's sort of like, your comfort level kind of expands, right? So you get one. I mean, that's what happened to me. You get one and you go, it's not so bad. I can handle it. It didn't take me out. So let me try and get another one, right? And like you said, each time it gets smarter, you get smarter and you learn. Now, if you don't learn by your mistakes, you have a high threshold for pain and like it, then it might not be the best thing for you. So Tim, so you give everybody an idea, you have 4,800 units. I mean, that, first of all, that's just amazing. So before we kind of like try and wrap our arms around that, are they all apartments? Do you have any single family houses now? Any commercial? Kind of give us the rundown on your portfolio.
I have 2 vacation rentals outside of Orlando. I own a primary residence in Charleston, a primary residence in Cleveland. I'm buying another residence. It's going to be like a short-term rental, but I'm going to use it as a kind of mountain house up in North Carolina. Those are the only single family houses I have. I have a handful of buildings that are under $1 million. I own 3 office buildings, 3 self-storage facilities, and I think everything else is apartments. Everything else, yeah. I have a little bit of land too, but I'm trying to sell it. It's a pain in the ass.
So before you bought your first apartment complex, how many single family houses did you have, or rentals, whether they're duplexes, triplexes, quads, whatever? What did that look like before you decided that you were going to go all in on the bigger stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I went all in on apartment buildings. Well, when I went broke, I had sold all my properties back in like 2000. I had like 10 units that I got when I was between 23 to 26 years old. And those 10
at
units
one time.
Yeah, I was financially free, right? From 10 units, including my primary residence. I wasn't rich, but my monthly expenses were more than what my monthly residual was more than what my monthly expenses were. I sold 9 houses. I only had my primary residence, and I pursued that network marketing company for 2.5 years. And in summer of 2012, I was like, dude, I'm not doing this anymore. I was the only one who made money. I had 800 reps on my team. It was a bad situation. I just couldn't. I didn't like it. So, and that's also when I was super, super broke. I had $25,000 in credit card debt. I had $80 in my bank account. I'm, paying for gas with coins out of the cup holder of my car. I was selling my DVDs for $3 on Craigslist just to be able to eat. Like, dude, it was crappy. And what got me out of that is real estate. I sold my house down in Charleston. I moved back to Cleveland, Ohio, moved back in with my parents, but I made 50 grand on that, but I had to pay down debt. I bought a ring for my girlfriend, who's now my wife. And, just swallowed my pride, and I got rid of my Mercedes, and I got, I don't even know, a Honda Accord or something. And, I just kind of like went through the process of press and reset. I was very humbled by that transaction. That's why I'm such a good steward of capital today. It's because I was a bad steward of capital, and I know what happens when you're a bad steward of capital. But when I went back to Cleveland, I want to get back in real estate. A couple guys that I met in that network marketing company said, "Hey man, we got into our original business so we can invest in real estate. Can we put money with you?" And so they put up a few $100,000. And I think that really is the switch. Once you have access to capital, you can go and do deals. Now you got to make sure they're good deals so you don't lose anybody's money. But it makes it a lot easier when you have people willing to lend you money who are not the bank. The bank's a pain in the butt. You don't want to deal with the bank. I just work with private money lenders. I would rather pay somebody 10, 12, 15% interest on their money rather than pay a bank 5 or 6% interest, just because it's faster. I can close quicker. I can use that quick closing to negotiate a better price point, which offsets the higher interest rate anyways. And I can just move faster. I don't have like inspections that come out and release funds to me and go through that whole, I hate dealing with banks. So I would much rather work with private lenders.
And Tim, and just a side note, and to your point, and I just want to bring this out. So,
going to bed.
All right. Good night. I remember when they were that little, man. Let me tell you something. They don't stay that little long. Jeez. Yeah. So, Tim, to your point, so a bank, what a lot of people have to realize with a bank, I mean, you have to really, the constraints that a bank puts on you as a investor. And I give you an idea. So I have a client of mine that had a business and bought a building for their business and got a mortgage from a bank for a commercial loan. Well, somewhere in that huge document that they have, the business was also tied as a guarantor to the financing. So they, for 15 years, made every mortgage payment on time, sold their business, could afford to continue to make the mortgage payment. But the minute the bank realized that they sold their business that was a guarantor, they actually started foreclosure proceedings on the building and yanked a bunch of money out of their bank because their guarantor, the business, was no longer around. So, I mean, yeah, to your point. So anyway, so you got these guys to give you 100,000 or whatever. What'd you do with it?
Yeah. So that's when I did a little bit of everything. And this is 2012. So everything was low end or like cheap. So I'd buy houses that are like $100,000 houses for 60 grand, fix them all up, sell them for 100, 110,000. So like kind of like some lower end starter type homes. And then I got into kind of like that mid-level type house. I mean, those houses I'm talking about, like I'd flip for $200,000, $250,000. They're probably selling for 400 today, maybe more. So like, kind of that entry level starter home. I got into more like mid-grade or like higher end kind of flips. And then I bought a bunch of single family rentals. And I like the rentals because I could flip it and make the same percentage return as I could on these other like retail type flips. But if it didn't sell, I didn't care because I still had cash flow coming in. So that like really resonated with me. I also like the non-emotional element of investment property versus dealing with, owner occupants who are very emotional and, oh, I like the house, I just don't like that backsplash. So let's go look at more houses. Like, are you kidding me? Like tell me and I'll rip it out and spend $2,000 more to put a new one in just to sell you this house for $250, that whole process was very, very stressful for me. So when I got into single family rentals and started flipping rental properties, I bought a duplex, I bought a quadplex or a triplex. And then all of a sudden, like this 8-unit building, came across my plate, and I was like, I can't not buy this thing. I could buy it and be all into it for $80,000. And it rented and had a net income of around 27 grand with me managing it. So it was like a 35% cap rate or something like that. And you're like, holy cow. And then I like the amount of scale really resonated with me. I could go to one.
You had
unit.
8 units one time, right? Yeah. So you
Yeah,
buy an 8-unit building. Boom,
I
you
go
got
to
8.
one building instead of 8 buildings. I could go collect rent from one spot instead of 8 spots. I had to negotiate with one seller instead of 8 sellers. I had one roof instead of 8 roofs. I had one foundation instead of 8, one utility bill instead of 8 utility bills. So it was just like, I liked it. It was more efficient. And to my need for efficiency, and my desire for that, like that's one of my biggest pet peeves is inefficiencies. And so like, I was like, okay, I really like this. And I like the scale that comes with it. And so I bought another 8 unit. So I didn't get into big deals. I organically grew with a bunch of small multifamily. So I did 8, another 8, a 14 unit, a 15 unit, a 23 unit, a 31 unit. And I organically grew until I had, I don't know, about 140 units with those business partners. That partnership ended up kind of butting heads. We ended up liquidating everything in 2015 and 16. And I went on my own. But I had the experience, right? And I had the wherewithal, and I had the connections, and I had the resources now where I could go and raise more private money. And I had, a balance sheet and a portfolio where I could show that I had done this much, where now the bank was willing to give me money on, we bought 84 townhouses down in Georgia with a partner of mine. And then all of a sudden we bought another 60 unit building down in Georgia, and then 134 unit building down in Georgia. And then it starts it's like a doubling penny every single day, and it's like every year I doubled. And so, in 2012, I had 10 units or something like that. In 2013, I had 60 or whatever. 2014, I probably had 100. 2015, I had like 140. And then in I was liquidating those 140, but as I was liquidating them, I started building up the portfolio again on my own without those guys. And I picked up, I don't know, another 80 units or something. And then I picked up 190 units the next year. And then I picked up another, I don't know, let's call it another 150 units or something the following year. And that's 2017, so it's not like it was a little bit. And I had 400 units in 2017. And then in 2018, just 3 years ago, I turned it on. So then I messed up enough where I figured it out. I knew how to structure capital. I knew how to raise money. I knew how to operate apartment buildings. I knew how to source apartment buildings. And then I pressed go, and all of a sudden I bought a 20 unit, another 24 unit, another 20 unit, a 72 unit portfolio, 48 unit, and then this 730 unit where I had to raise $4 million in 48 hours came across my desk. And I was up to around 600 units in early 2018. And that doubled my portfolio overnight. So I was up 1,300 units. And I picked up another, 100 units by the end of the year. So I was like 1,400 units at the end of 2018. 2019 went on a tear, picked up 2,000 doors. So again, you're just doubling. 2020 happened. And despite COVID, we still bought another 1,000 units. And then this year I picked up, 600 units or something so far.
And you said today you closed on your biggest deal. Today.
My biggest single deal just closed like 3 hours ago. It was mayhem. It is mayhem leading to the finish line.
And how many doors was that? And how much was it again?
Yeah, 552 doors in Houston, Texas, in a good, like, kind of gentrifying type of area. We're going to be bumping up the rents and, cosmetically improving the units, and just kind of, there's some things the seller didn't do, some good things that they did do, but got it going, but didn't get it to the finish line. And so there's still a lot of juice in the squeeze on this. And so we bought 552 units. We're all in for $77 million. So it's actually one of the larger price per doors that I've ever purchased. Most of my stuff is more like workforce B class, all in for somewhere between $40,000 to $80,000 a door. This one we bought it for, I don't even know, what is that, about $130 a door, $140 a door, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we expect it to be worth around $200 a door when we're all done with it. So we're gonna be able to bump up rent significantly and reduce expenses, put a bunch of efficiencies in place. And it's supposed to be worth around $106 million when we're all said and done in about 36 months. So all in for 77, worth 106.
Wow.
$30 million of equity from one deal. And it's not all mine. I have about a quarter of the deal, but it increased that one deal. Think about this. This is insane. One deal increased my net worth by $7.5 million.
So Tim, how do you sleep at night, man? I mean, for a lot of people, for me, just thinking about that, I'm like, man, you sleep sound. You don't toss and turn. Some heavy medication or what, man?
I got some big bank loans. I have, I probably owe the banks $250 million, and I'm the sponsor on all the loans. I'm the one who signs on all these things. I'm the general partner.
And your wife just sits back and says, "You better not screw this up, man."
She's like, "I don't want to know."
Right. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
So what can you? So tell people what kind of systems do you have in place? So you've been doubling and quadrupling, and in a short amount of time, you're 35 years old. You figured this out so quickly. How do you tell people to go from one house to two houses, to 8 houses, to 16 houses, to 30 houses, to 100 houses? Man, what's the system?
Yeah, man, it's just doing deals. Like, everybody thinks that you fall into a 100-unit deal. That's not the way it works, right? Like, if you come across a 100-unit deal, there's 2 ways to take it down. The first way is organically growing your portfolio, like I did, until you get up to around 100 units, and then the bank will qualify you to buy another 100 units. And so it's, again, this doubling the penny. And if you realize you double a penny every single day for 30 days, you realize half of the growth happens on the last day, right? Like, it doubles and finally hits over $1 million or whatever it is on the last day, or the 29th day. 90% of the growth happens the last 10% of the day or of the month. And so, like, it takes a lot of doubling up until you get enough momentum. Like, it's like an airplane. Like, an airplane on an hour flight or whatever. I read that an airplane uses like almost half of the fuel just on the takeoff, right? Just getting up in the air that it's going to use on that flight, and then the other half is just while it's coasting up in the air. That's like business, right? Like, a lot of work takes to get this thing off the air. Or get this thing up in the air. And then the next 87% of the flight is just the other half of the fuel, right? It's just kind of like pumping the gas a little bit, keeping it up in the air, doing a little bit of corrections. All right. Hey, it's not as much work once you're up there because you messed up so many times and you built a team and you understand better operations. So it's like, it's organically growing. So that's the first way of doing it. The second way is you come across a 100-unit deal and you're like, hey, I can't take this down myself. And a lot of people just throw that away. What you could do is bring it to me or somebody like me in your own local market. They can take it down, and instead of paying you a fee, maybe they kick you a couple percentage of equity in it. And all of a sudden it starts building up your net worth and your wealth as well, and you learn the process. So on deal number 2, maybe you can take it down. On deal number 4, 5, 10, so it's like, you got to get the momentum. The momentum is the most important thing you can be doing. You can get rolling. So it's just doing deals. Like, it doesn't have to be a home run. It doesn't have to be a grand slam. Just do base hits. Base hits is what wins baseball games.
So what kind of legal, paperwork, responsibilities? When you're, taking money from people to do a deal, like say somebody needs to raise $100,000 or $500,000. What do you recommend? How do they structure that? They give them equity or strictly a loan? What do you usually do?
Do whatever you want. It can be structured 1,000 different ways. There's no one size fits all. I will say that investors, if you're flipping houses or doing something on a smaller scale, there's 2 types of investments typically for real estate passive lenders. The first is a debt loan, which means, Todd, I'm going to lend you $100,000. You're going to pay me 12% return annually, right? Whether you make money or lose money, I make 12%. You give me my money back and I move on. That's cool for me because I have predictable cash flow. But if you go get rich and you make $200,000, I still only make 12 grand, So there's no equity upside, but there's also no downside to that. So that's a debt loan. Then there's equity investments. And equity investment says, hey, Todd, I'm going to give you 100 grand and we're going to split this thing 50-50, right? And so you're going to go do the work. And as you improve it and you make it worth 200 grand, I make 50 grand, you make 50 grand. But if you lose $10,000, I don't make any return. In fact, I lose $5,000 and you lose $5,000, so there's upside, or there's upside and downside, but there's no predictable cash flow. I found that investors want both. How do you create a hybrid of the two? And so if I was flipping houses, what I used to do is I'd say, hey, let me pay you a 10% return or 15% of the equity of the profit, whichever is more.
Or one or the other.
Yeah. And I'll say, and they don't have to choose one. I just say, hey, I'll pay you minimum 10% or 15% of the profit, whichever one is more. So now they have a minimum threshold of, I know I'm going to make at least 10% of my money, and I could potentially make more. That's smart. A sweet deal for a lender. And it's very hard for somebody to say no to something like that. So that's what I would do if I'm flipping houses. And it doesn't, I don't know, depending on how good of a deal it is, you might have to give up 50% instead of 15%. It just kind of depends on the deal. For the way that I structure my apartment buildings, I did a hybrid similarly. I pay my investors somewhere between 8 to 10% fixed rate of return. And then again, I do the BRRRR method, which is buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and then repeat. So I buy the building, I fix it all up, I put good tenants in place, put good management in place. And once it's stable, that's when I refinance it. I pull all my money off the table and all my investor money off the table. And then we just leave a bank loan in place and I can let it cash flow. Okay. So what I do,
pay everybody back at that point. You pay all the investors back.
Yeah.
As soon as you get the bank involved, you cash out the deal, you pay everybody. Now it's all you. You own it all.
So my minimum threshold. Well, no. I leave my investors in. So that's
okay.
So like my model is I need to be all in for 70 cents on the dollar. So on a $10 million building, I need to be all in for $7 million and purchase price renovation costs. So on that, my investors, let's say the bank would give me $5.5 million. I would go raise $1.5 million for my investors. Make sense? Follow me so far?
Yes.
I'm all in, purchase price renovation for $7 million. It's now stable. It's fully occupied. It's at market rate rents. I got good management in place. I can go back to a new bank and they'll appraise it at $10 million. They'll give me a 70% LTV loan, 70% loan to value, which is $7 million. With that $7 million they give me, I pay back the bridge loan to the first bank of 5.5, and I pay back my investors of 1.5. My investors made, let's call it 10% on their money while it was in play. Then they get all their money back, and then I keep them in. They keep 25% of the equity forever. So now they get 25% of cash flow, 25%, if there's any refinance proceeds too, 25% of depreciation, 25% of appreciation, 25% of future sales proceeds when we sell this thing for a profit in 5 years or 10 years or 30 years from now. So it's a way that they can earn a predictable rate of return and at the same time build some real wealth and look at me as a long-term partner. Because if somebody goes and dangles an 11% or 12% carrot in front of their face, they say, not interested, Tim's my partner. I'm going to keep on investing with Tim because he gives me equity in these deals long term. So it's a way that I can then recycle the capital and I don't have to go out hunting for money all the time. I have access to a lot of capital because I'm not greedy about it. I don't care about this deal. I care about the next deal and the next one and the next one and the next one. I care about how this deal sets me up for the next deal. So I think it's just, I have more of a long-term philosophy. And I think when you get stuck in such a short-term mindset, short-term box, that's when people kind of get tripped up because they make bad decisions. I always try to make my decisions on what is the best long-term, right? Like I would pass up short-term wins and quick cash in order to get long-term equity in deals because equity is how you make millions and billions.
Yeah, that's great. And the same goes with the smaller stuff too. I mean, if you're going to buy a rental property and you can afford to either raise the cash so you're not dealing with the bank right away or fund it yourself, and then you refinance that deal after you've made your renovations and things like that, it's the way to go because you just want to make sure that the lender will give you, like, we're talking about here, the loan to value. So if it's 70 or 75% loan to value, it's the appraised value. If it's 100,000 appraised value, if it's a 75% loan to value, they'll give you 75,000. But in a lot of times, a lot of cases, you only spent 75,000. So you get all of your money back, right? When you refi the deal with the bank, you get all your money back and you can go do that next deal. And usually if you're somewhere around that 70% loan to value, that's a pretty safe bet. There can be a market dip, a market adjustment, and you're still not going to lose should you need to dump the property, or it's going to cash flow at that kind of, that kind of mortgage. So let's, guys, if you're listening, you have a question, for Tim, definitely, type it in the comments here. Ruth Line says, good stuff, guys. Thank you, Ruth. We really appreciate you watching. Chris Birch here for Tim. How has COVID affected your investments, and what sort of tenants do you currently have? Traditional, Section 8, which is now the housing choice voucher, et cetera. Thank you, Chris. So, Tim.
Yeah, I think, COVID rattled everybody. Nobody knew what the heck it was. Nobody knew what was going to come from it. Nobody knew, all these economists and all these people who are like predicting what the market's going to look like over the next year. Dude, they would have all been wrong a year and 4 days ago. You know what I mean? Like they had no idea what was going to happen in 2020. So, to try to create a picture of what the future is going to look like and have a crystal ball, nobody saw it coming. It spooked everybody. Everybody was freaked out about it. So no matter, oh no, I didn't care. Like everybody was like, all right, what are we going to do? Like, let's get our bearings on this thing. Especially us, like COVID hit and all of a sudden they're talking rent moratoriums and all of a sudden they're talking or eviction moratoriums. And I was like, this could be a really bad situation if we let it get bad. But before this thing hits us in the face, I think we need to hit it in the face. So let's attack this thing in a proactive manner. And we got super communicative. Like I think, some landlords were like, "Oh no, I'm not telling any of the tenants that they don't have to pay rent. Like I'm not doing." So what, you think you can have an apartment building and the tenants aren't going to find out? And they're not going to talk that they're not paying. Like, are you kidding me? So I was like, I knew that's going to happen. So let's go and tell them so they hear it from us before they hear it from the news or some other conspiratory, tenant alliance that's going to come at us because we're big bad landlords. And so we put a letter together. We drafted a letter. We said, hey, appreciate you for being a tenant. COVID's going crazy. Here's all the things that we're doing to make sure that you stay safe and healthy in your home. We're implementing, there's hand sanitizers and we're doing extra cleaning multiple times a week and we're doing this and that and blah, blah, we're wearing masks, whatever it was. So we talked about all those things. We said, I don't know if you heard or not, but there's actually an eviction moratorium. An eviction moratorium means you cannot be evicted, but that does not mean that you don't have to pay rent. Here's why it's really important that you continue to pay rent, because our rent doesn't go to allow people to feed me grapes and fan me with feathers as I'm on vacation. It pays for the utility bills. It pays for a maintenance person to come and clean your place. It pays for the exterminator to come and spray for bugs or eliminate rodents. It pays for the trash so that way you don't have rats running all around your house. It pays for the security and alarm system. It pays for the grass to get cut. It pays for a clean, safe, functional home for you and your family to live in. And if you don't pay your rent, we can't pay our bills. And then you don't have a clean, safe, functional place to live in. And that's not good for you and it's not good for us. So it's really important that you continue to pay. That being said, if you have issues paying, here's how we can help you. If you have problems and you've been affected by COVID and employment, blah, 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 let us know and we will work with you to put you on a payment plan or figure out some sort of a system to take care of you. And you can look at all these different subsidy organizations, and we connect them with everybody: food subsidies, rental subsidies, income subsidies, churches, housing organizations, like everything that we could possibly do. We would help them fill out paperwork to apply to get these subsidies as well. So we were super ambitious about it, and it worked. And all of our properties, I would say, at least for the first tranche, super smooth. We collected 97% of rents, and we had about 2 to 3% of tenants on payment plans. When the eviction moratorium came up, pretty much everybody came. Anybody else, came up with the money or figured it out and was able to pay us, and it went pretty smooth. The second round of the eviction moratorium, what's going on right now, All the A and B class tenants that I have, all pretty good. The C class tenants that I have, there's a little bit of gaming of the system. It was like for the first month, 1 or 2% wouldn't pay, and then the second month another couple percent wouldn't pay, and then all of a sudden it goes down this path of a bunch of tenants not paying, and I don't know. Some of the buildings were probably collecting 85% of rents right now. All the B class stuff and A class stuff is pretty good. I'm waiting for the eviction moratorium to end, and I know that 90% of the people who do owe us money will catch up. They're just trying to game the system a little bit. So I'm not too concerned about it. We bought at a low enough basis. We have great debt in place. We have great operations in place. We can cover all of our expenses and our mortgage and all that stuff with all that. But yeah, I mean, we do have some Section 8 tenants or subsidy type tenants, but not many. I don't know. My entire portfolio, 4,800 doors, I probably have less than 100 for sure. Everybody else is market rate. And I'll tell you this, if you do these two things, you will eliminate 90% of your landlord issues. Number one, take care of your apartment building. Okay. Make sure it's clean, safe, functional, cosmetically updated. Make sure when maintenance calls come in, you take care of it. Do not be a slumlord. And number two is you screen your tenants, right? If somebody's got an eviction history and they're a full-time tenant and just gaming the system, don't let them in, right? Run background checks, run eviction checks, run credit checks. If they're not paying their cell phone bill, you think they're going to get paid rent? Hell no, right? If they're not paying their TV bill, you think they're going to pay rent? No, absolutely not. If they're not paying their car, you think they're going to pay rent? No. So you got to look out for that kind of stuff. I don't care if they have medical bills or whatever. I'm not worried about that, or student loan debt. I'm looking for bills that they typically pay before they pay rent. So I'm paying attention to that. I'm making sure that the income is there. Do they have a job? If they're qualified, obviously if they have a job right now, then they're not affected by COVID. If, are they a violent criminal history of any sort? Like, you don't want people in your apartment building who have, who notoriously get in fights all the time, or God forbid they raped or did something horrible like that. You don't want
get beat up, picking up your rent check, right?
Yeah, man.
Exactly.
Or scaring away other tenants and beating the piss out of other tenants. You don't need that. So, I'm paying attention to those things, and we're screening our tenants, and we take care of the property. And if you do those two things, tenants pay rent. So I don't. Again, there's 1% of crazies that still kind of sneak in, and you still have to deal with. But 99% of landlord-tenant issues, even with COVID, are eliminated if you do those two things. So, as you buy,
I completely agree. Yeah. I mean, I always tell people they're better off vacant, before you jump to put the wrong tenant in, place the wrong tenant, keep it vacant because I mean, I've had numerous, we could share stories all night long. I mean, with just nightmare tenants. So, we're going to get ready and wrap up here. We could talk all night, Tim. I mean, you've given such valuable information. You also, we've talked a lot too, sort of, offline about just financial literacy, not being, really taught how to, number one, take calculated risks, or, take your money and invest it and, with favorable return, or just feel comfortable doing that. And you teach a lot. So you coach. You're an author. You and your wife have authored these books. Just tell everybody a little bit. And guys, check Tim out. Check out his YouTube. Subscribe. We'd love for you to subscribe to us too if you haven't already done so. If you like to learn about investing in real estate, just anything and everything real estate, but check out Tim. Tim, talk about the books that you and your wife have published and written, and how people can find out more about you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. I think you get to a certain point in life, and it's not necessarily about the money anymore. I'm not just a student of real estate. I'm a student of wealth building. I'm a student of financial personal finance. I'm a student of entrepreneurship. I'm a student of business. I'm a student of mindset. I'm a student of happiness. Like I do a lot of reading and research and watching the programs on all those different kinds of things. And I remember watching a program on happiness several years ago, and it was like, once your basic needs are met, your food's on the table, clothes are on your back, roof is over your head, you live in a safe neighborhood, you don't have to worry about the safety of your family. Once those basic needs are met, which is in most communities probably $50,000 to $70,000 a year of household income, and those things are taken care of, there's no difference in level of happiness whether you make $50,000 a year or $50 million a year. They've studied it over and over and over again, and that's a very true. Obviously, dude, life, money gives you options. I'd rather have money than not have money, right? And I remember hearing that and be like, I still want to test it out. I still want to try to get the 50 million, But I will say that there's a level of once those basic needs are met, it's more about impact. It's more about making a difference. It's more about helping people. And it's weird. Like I always thought that was cheesy and like corny. And when I heard people say that, but I count, like I told you, my mom's big into volunteerism and stuff, and planted a seed inside of me of like, I love teaching, I love coaching, I love mentoring. And so, I do a little bit of that on the real estate side. But when my daughter was, and I'm a student of personal development, and so I've read all the Tony Robbins and the Jim Rohns, and like I said, the John Maxwell's and the Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People and Richest Man in Babylon and Rich Dad Poor Dad and all those things. They've all had significant impacts on my life, and not just, like we get programmed one way in school and then we have to reprogram ourselves. And I remember coming back from a flight at a real estate conference, and I'm reading The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz on this airplane. And while I'm reading it, I was in the prologue. I was like, damn, these are such amazing principles. Like, this is powerful stuff. And I'm getting this at, I think it was 31 or 32 at the time. And I was like, and I've read a lot of books before that. And my daughter was 2, and I was like, I need to instill these principles. So we don't have to reprogram her. She can just be programmed the right way early on. And so I got off that flight and I started looking up personal development books and like achievement-oriented books for kids. And I couldn't find anything. Like, there were some things about, working hard and some money and addition and finance type stuff. And maybe like, the golden rule of treating others how you want to be treated. But there wasn't anything on like philosophy and influence and goal setting and positive gratitude and like things like that. There wasn't much of that out there. And so, I think when, the universe, God, whatever you believe in, plants an idea in the back of your head, I don't think you should say no to that. I think turning away to that means you're not going to get new ideas, right? And so I had this idea, and I was like, I need to develop these books, but I was so busy. Again, this is 2018, I want to say 2017, 2018, that I don't even know, whatever. And so my real estate's going like this, as I told you before, like right during that time. And I was just so busy, I couldn't come up with these kids' books. And then I ended up partnering with my wife and a very good friend of ours from high school and college. And the women wrote the books. We brought on some illustrators, and we essentially have a line of kids' books called Little Legacy Library. And we take those, the classic personal development books, the thought-leading books that all other business books today are essentially modeled off of, which are Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Richest Man in Babylon, The Power of Positive Thinking, and The Magic of Thinking Big. We have those 5 books, and we have children's versions of each of those books.
That's amazing.
We've released, so we have Think Big and Go to Baseball Camp, based off of Think and Grow Rich. We have How to Win How to Win Class President and Influence Peers, based off of How to Win Friends and Influence People. Our next book is Power of Positivity, coming out in the next 30 days or so. We'll be launching that one. And then we have The Richest Kid in the Neighborhood, based off of The Richest Man in Babylon. And they're really fun. They're really good books. They're for ages probably 4 to 10 years old, I'd say. Although I get a lot of my entrepreneur friends sending me messages being like, dude, don't tell anybody, but I got a lot out of that book.
Right. I read it 3 times.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. They're like, dude, I wish I had this. it's about
That's
impact.
awesome.
Like, they're not big money makers. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we can get a book deal eventually from
They're like
Scholastic or
$7.
somebody.
I looked online on your. I mean,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
they're
It's whatever it is. It's
price
like,
really. There's no reason not to buy them. That's
yeah. Well, what we did is we have a workbook for everything also. So each of the books has the storyline, and at the end it has like a talk and take action. And so there's some things that you can do with your kid in order to kind of talk about the principles that were outlined in the book. And then we have a workbook that goes along with it, which is more of that, along with crossword puzzles and word searches and coloring pages and all sorts of stuff. And so yeah, the coloring books are, I don't even know, $7, $8 or something like that. And then the maybe $10 on Amazon. And then the actual books are somewhere, I don't know, $15, $20, depending on if you want a hardback or soft paperback book. But they're awesome for, baby showers. They're awesome for birthday parties. They're awesome for holidays. It's one of those things where it's not going to be a toy that they outgrow. It's something that will imprint inside of them principles of achievement, principles of success, principles of critical thinking, and positivity and gratitude and goal setting and all the things that we wish we had earlier on when we were in that flexible personality development phase. And instead, we had to get brainwashed by school and then reprogram ourselves outside of school. Imagine these kids coming out and having their own business when they're a teenager, and coming out of school and being like, nah, I'm going to take this money and I'm going to go and launch an 8-figure company and do this. I think it could really be some cool stuff and really, again, create that ripple effect to make an impact on lots of future generations.
You're doing awesome stuff, Tim. Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Bratz. I mean, check him out. Tim, thank you so much for being on our show tonight.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me. If anybody wants to connect, just shoot me a message on Facebook or Instagram. I'm very active on both of those. And the books are littlelegacylibrary.com.
Yeah, we'll post all your links in the show notes. Yeah. So what's next?
I appreciate it. You asked me a lot of great questions. So I love conversing with you, man.
8,000 units. I mean, what's next? I mean, you've been doubling. I mean, are you going to keep growing?
Yeah, the short-term goal is $1 billion in assets. So I think we can hit that in the next 24 months is the ambition. It's
that's
different.
More than doubling. That's more than doubling, right?
So it's about 10,000 doors is probably around what we'll average. So 10,000 doors, we'll be essentially doubled, probably a little bit nicer class of stuff. And then, I don't know what's after that, man. I don't know if it's $1 billion fund. I don't know if it's going on to $5 billion of property. I don't know if it's, I like the idea of flipping businesses too. I think businesses are kind of cool. You can buy a property for $10 million and sell it for $13 or $15 million or flip, it'd be worth that. You could take a business that's worth $10 million and turn it into 50 or $100 million, and in the same amount of time. So I think you can build a lot of wealth if you understand business principles. And so that's something that I'm considering, but I also don't chase shiny objects anymore. I'm very focused. And so I'm my head's down until we hit $1 billion. And then at that time, when I cross that threshold, I don't even set my goals out more than like 3 years anymore because things change so quickly. I think I told you before, like my goal for my life was $100 million portfolio, and just
past that,
flew past it. But it happens quickly. Like it's just like it compounds. It's so slow, and then all of a sudden you're like boom, 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 400 million. And I was like, it's so like everybody overestimates what we can accomplish in 12 months. Everybody grossly underestimates what they can accomplish in 3 to 5 years. So whatever you commit to doing, do it for minimum 3 to 5 years. So that way you can become an expert. You can get through the tough phases of the business. And then all of a sudden you come out on 5 years later, you're the authority in that industry. And all of people are looking at you. It's easy to do deals because you've created all the resources, all the connections. You've been through all the garbage. Your systems are in place. Your processes are in place. Your team is in place. And now it's just profitable deals. Now it's not, are you going to succeed or not? Once you get to a certain level, it's like there's just varying levels of success. That's it. So, but you got to put your head down. Where I see people messing up is they jump from one thing to another thing every time it gets hard. And if you only spend 2 years in each job, if you only spend 2 years in each business, and you bail every single time it gets difficult, you never become an expert in anything. You spend your entire life thinking the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. And here's the secret. It's not. It's just different, and it takes a whole heck of a lot of watering.
Amen. Well, that's great advice. So, guys, we want to hear from you. We want to know what your aspirations are, what inspires you, what your goals are, where's the next move for you. Drop them in the comments. Reach out to us. Thanks for watching, and guys, until next week, see you soon.